Lagos has a way of teaching lessons with noise, neon lights, and the kind of heartbreak that echoes between skyscrapers and street markets. And this is the story of a girl who learned the price of wanting a life shinier than her reality. Her name was Abeni, a dreamer in a city that devours dreamers whole before spitting out the survivors. She didn't grow up with much, but she carried an imagination big enough to make the mainland feel small. She believed she was destined for more, and maybe she was, but not in the way she imagined. Abeni lived in Suralire with her mother and two younger siblings, in a cramped two-room apartment where morning routines felt like a wrestling match. She was 22, passionate about fashion, and convinced she was only one lucky moment away from getting discovered. Every day, she sketched outfits in an old notebook whose pages were beginning to curl at the corners. Every night, she scrolled through Instagram, staring at Lagos influencers posing at rooftop lounges in Six, wondering why life seemed so much easier for them, why success seemed to fall at their feet while she struggled to afford fabric. But even in her imperfect world, she had one constant: Kahind. Kahind was 24, a soft-spoken carpenter who worked in a small workshop tucked behind a mechanic yard, where sawdust hung in the air like morning fog. He wasn't rich, he wasn't flashy, but he was steady, the kind of steady Lagos rarely rewarded. He believed in her the way a person believes in sunrise, certain, without question. Whenever she lost faith in her designs, whenever she cried over being ignored by tailors and boutiques, he held her hand and said, "Your time will come, Abeni, and I'll be here when it does." He made her laugh. He bought her suya when she couldn't afford dinner. He surprised her with a small second-hand sewing machine after saving for months. He wasn't perfect, but he was hers, and for a time that was enough. But Lagos changes people, and sometimes it changes what they believe they deserve. It began with one simple moment, a lunch hangout with two of her friends. They met at a cafe in Yaba where the walls were decorated with abstract art and the Wi-Fi password was longer than most relationships. Her friends, Toke and Mariam, arrived dripping in designer outfits, posting Insta stories before even sitting down. They spoke about men who flew them to Dubai, men who sent them money just because, men who lived in Lekki Phase 1 and didn't flinch when bills were dropped on the table. And then, they asked about Kahind. Not kindly, not with curiosity, but with the subtle pity reserved for people who date below the Lagos standard of glamour. "Abeni, be honest," Toke said, adjusting her 40-inch wig. "Do you really see future in that carpenter boy?" They said it softly, but the wound was sharp. Mariam leaned forward, swirling her iced latte. "Baby girl, you're too fine for struggle love. You need a soft life. A man who will elevate you." The words clung to her skin. They stayed with her even after she got home, even after Kahind held her hand and asked how her day was. She smiled at him, but the smile didn't reach her heart, because seeds of doubt grow fast in Lagos. The turning point came one Friday evening in Victoria Island. Abeni had attended a small fashion networking event, hoping, praying, that someone would notice her designs. The event ended without luck, and she walked outside, ready to board a bus back home, when a sleek black 2024 Mercedes GLE pulled up. The windows lowered, and he appeared, Folktale, light-skinned, sharply dressed, wearing confidence like a fragrance. He looked at her the way a man looks at something he wants to own. He complimented her outfit, asked if she was a designer, asked if she needed a ride, asked if she had ever been to a rooftop lounge overlooking the Atlantic. He spoke with money, moved with money, smelled like money, and Lagos had taught her one thing: money makes people listen. She said yes. That night, he took her to a high-rise restaurant with blue lights, cocktail glasses that sparkled like diamonds, and a live band that played soft Afrobeats. Folktale talked about his crypto business, his connections with influencers, his penthouse in Lekki, the vacations he took on a whim. He made her feel seen, admired, chosen, like she was stepping into a life she had only watched through screens. He took selfies with her, posted her on his Insta story with the caption, "Vibes." It was the first time she felt like she belonged in the world she envied. When she got home that night, Kahind was waiting outside her apartment, holding a bag of groceries he had bought for her family. He smiled and asked how the event went. But she looked at him differently now. His worn-out jeans, his dusty boots, his tired eyes after a long day in the workshop. He didn't sparkle. He didn't shine. He didn't look like the life she had tasted hours earlier. And slowly, painfully, the distance began. She stopped replying to Kahind's messages quickly, stopped visiting the workshop, stopped sharing her dreams with him. Meanwhile, Folktale showered her with gifts. A new smartphone, designer shoes, a wig she had admired online. He took her out every weekend, introduced her to his wealthy friends, boasted about her talent. For the first time in her life, Abeni felt like she was on the path to greatness. And Kahind felt her slipping away. But he held on, trying to understand, trying to love her enough for both of them, trying to believe she was just overwhelmed with life and would find her way back. He didn't know she had already left him in her heart. The breakup came one Sunday afternoon after he surprised her with a handmade wooden mannequin for her designs. He carried it all the way from his workshop to her street, wiped sweat from his forehead, and knocked softly on her door. She wasn't alone. Folktale's car was parked outside. When she opened the door, she looked almost ashamed to see Kahind standing there. Almost. He offered her the mannequin with shaking hands. She stared at it, stared at the effort, the love, the pure intention, and felt a nothing. No spark, no warmth, just the weight of her new world pressing against her chest. Kahind, she whispered, I think we want different things now. He blinked hard. What changed? He asked. She hesitated. Then she said the words that shattered him completely. I'm tired of struggling. I want more, and you can't give me that life. The silence that followed felt like a funeral, not of a relationship, but of a man's hope. Kahind nodded slowly. He didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't fight for a place in a heart that no longer had room for him. He simply said, I hope you find what you're looking for. And he left. Abeni watched him walk away, unaware that she had just traded gold for glitter, unaware that Lagos was about to teach her the truth about the soft life she chased so desperately. For a while, life with Folktale felt like stepping into a dream she never wanted to wake from. She moved between rooftop lounges, private beach outings, soft-lit restaurants in Victoria Island, and influencers' house parties where everybody posed more than they genuinely lived. Every night was a new adventure. Every morning a new gift. Perfume, jewelry, new outfits, gadgets she never imagined she would own. Abeni's Instagram following grew. Her pictures were clearer. Her captions glowed with confidence. And her comments filled with admiration. She was becoming the kind of girl she once envied. The world looked different from the passenger seat of a luxury SUV. Lagos traffic didn't annoy her. It became a background for selfies. Bills didn't scare her. Folktale always paid with a casual flick of his card. Success felt close enough to touch. But the thing about Lagos glamour is that it never warns you when it starts to fade. The cracks began small. A canceled date because Folktale had urgent business. A sudden mood swing over nothing. A long phone call he stepped outside to take, speaking too quietly to be heard. A friend's warning whispered at a party, Abeni, that guy's lifestyle doesn't match his source. But she ignored the signs. She wanted to keep believing. Then one afternoon, while they were preparing for a getaway trip, she noticed the tension in his voice as he argued on the phone. He paced the living room of his Lekki apartment aggressively, clutching his hair with one hand. When he hung up, she asked softly, Is everything okay? He forced a smile. Just work stress, baby. Nothing to worry about. But his eyes looked like a man drowning. The following weeks felt strange. He stopped buying gifts. He stopped taking her out as often. He snapped easily, apologized quickly, then snapped again. He became distracted, sometimes disappearing for a day with vague excuses. His friends came around less. His phone rang more. The penthouse was no longer filled with laughter and music. It felt cold, stiff, like a luxury cage. The turning point came after she overheard a conversation late one night. Folarin was whispering by the window, pacing rapidly. "Look, I just need more time." No, don't threaten me. I said I'll get it. Just hold on." The call ended with him punching the wall. Abeni's heart raced. This was not the man she thought she knew. When she asked him what was wrong, he exploded. "Must you ask questions? Can't you just stay quiet for once? Do you think soft life comes cheap?" His voice echoed in the apartment. For the first time, she felt afraid. But she stayed. Because leaving meant facing the truth, that she had abandoned someone who loved her for a man who loved the idea of her. Soon after, the truth unraveled faster than she could keep up with. A major crypto crash wiped out most of Folarin's investments. His luxury concierge company was not a registered business, just a front he used to impress people. His influencer partnerships had been declining for months. His debts, once hidden, now cast shadows across every room in the penthouse. He sold his second car, then his expensive gadgets, then some of the designer items he had bought her. His Instagram activity slowed. His calls with creditors grew louder, angrier, more desperate. The glamorous life collapsed like a fragile glass tower. Abeni watched helplessly as the world she once admired shrank around her. Parties stopped. Friends disappeared. Nights became heavy with silence and frustration. Folarin began drinking more, sleeping less. And over time, she saw the truth. He hadn't loved her. He had loved the attention she added to his image. She became a symbol of the lifestyle he was trying to maintain. And now, she was a reminder of everything he was losing. The emotional abuse began subtly. Passive remarks about her worth, harsh comments disguised as jokes, blaming her for his stress. Then it grew sharper. One night, when she suggested getting a part-time job to support herself, he sneered. "You? Work? Doing what?" "Modeling cheap clothes on the street." Her chest tightened. Tears threatened. But he wasn't done. "Don't forget, Abeni, without me you're nothing. I made you relevant." She felt her heart break in a way she didn't know was possible. This wasn't the soft life she'd imagined. This wasn't comfort. This was confinement. The final straw came a week later, when a heated argument escalated. He grabbed her arm. Not enough to injure, but enough to send a cold wave of fear through her body. Enough to make her realize she needed to leave before fear became danger. That night, while he slept on the couch surrounded by empty bottles, she packed quietly. Just a small bag, clothes, her sketchbook, her phone charger, and the little dignity she still had left. She slipped out of the apartment, down the elevator, past the security post, and into the cold night air of Lekki. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she had to go. The city was quiet in that strange, hollow way that only Lagos can be at 3 a.m., when even the noise seems to pause. Abeni stood on the roadside, heart trembling, waiting for a taxi that felt like freedom. The ride back to Surulere felt endless. Every streetlight reminded her of choices she now regretted. Every billboard felt like a judgment. She looked at her reflection in the window, tired, thinner, eyes swollen from crying. This was not the girl who had chased glamour. This was someone who had survived it. When the taxi stopped in front of her childhood home, she hesitated. How do you walk back into a life you abandoned? How do you face the people who warned you? But she had no choice. With trembling hands, she knocked. Her mother opened the door, shocked, then pulled her into a tight embrace. No questions, no blame, just the warmth of someone who never stopped loving her. But the hardest part was still ahead. Facing Kahind. She saw him 3 days later by accident. He was at a roadside kiosk buying materials for work, wearing a simple white t-shirt stained with sawdust. But something about him had changed. His confidence was sharper, his posture straighter, his presence stronger. He had grown. He recognized her instantly. His eyes widened, not with anger, but with something far gentler. Maybe pity, maybe understanding, maybe the acknowledgement that time had changed them both. She approached slowly, heart pounding. "Kenny," she whispered. He smiled politely, warm but distant. The kind of smile you give someone who used to know you deeply but doesn't anymore. Abeni, how are you? The question was innocent, but it shattered her. She broke down in front of him, crying harder than she had in months, unable to speak, unable to breathe. He guided her to a bench, offered her water, let her cry without rushing her. When she finally managed to speak, her voice cracked. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. He didn't respond right away. He simply looked at her with eyes that held both past pain and present clarity. Abeni, he said softly, you didn't choose me, and that's okay. But life taught you what love couldn't teach. She lowered her eyes. Can we try again? Silence wrapped around them. A long, heavy silence. Then he shook his head gently. I cared for you deeply, maybe too deeply, but I can't go back to who I was. I've moved forward. And you need to find yourself again. His words were soft, but they cut deeper than any insult. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Kahine's refusal lingered in the air like the final note of a sad song, soft yet undeniable. Abeni sat beside him on the bench, her tears drying slowly as the reality settled. She had imagined many outcomes, many responses he might give, anger, bitterness, maybe even relief that she had returned. But she never expected this calm, steady boundary, the kind a man learns only after surviving heartbreak and rebuilding himself from the pieces. She wiped her face, feeling smaller than she ever had. Kenny, I'm sorry, she whispered. He nodded, but his expression didn't shift. I know, and I forgive you, truly. But forgiveness isn't the same as going back. Those words carried a wisdom she hadn't earned yet. For a moment they just sat there. Two people with a shared history, separated by choices time couldn't undo. The bustle of Suralire continued around them. Bus conductors shouting destinations, honking danfos squeezing through traffic, hawkers selling snacks in sing-song voices. Life moved on, indifferent to the drama of human hearts. Eventually, Kahine stood. I need to get back to the workshop, he said softly. She rose too, her voice trembling. Can we still talk sometimes? He gave a faint smile, warm, but not promising. Let's just take things one day at a time. And with that, he walked away, leaving her standing alone in the sunlight. But this time, not abandoned. This time, simply facing her own decisions. The next few weeks were some of the hardest in Abeni's life. Returning home wasn't just a physical change. It was an emotional reckoning. She had to learn to live without noise, without luxury, without the constant stimuli of the soft life she once craved. Her phone was quieter now. Her Instagram engagement dropped. The same people who hyped her when she lived in Lekki no longer called. Friends she thought were permanent revealed themselves to be seasonal. But sometimes losing everything gives you the space to rebuild something better. Her mother welcomed her with patience. Her siblings treated her like she had never left. They didn't care about her hair, her outfits, or her past mistakes. They just wanted her around again. Their innocence brought a kind of healing she didn't know she needed. Slowly, she returned to her sketchbook, not to impress influencers or attract attention, but because designing clothes made her feel alive. It was the first time in months she created without thinking about clout. At first, her ideas felt rusty. Lines wobbled. Inspiration felt weak. But day by day, her old passion resurfaced. Raw, unpolished, and real. Meanwhile, Lagos continued doing what Lagos does best, turning ordinary stories into unexpected opportunities. One afternoon, while exploring the local market for cheap fabric, she stumbled across a small sewing shop run by an elderly woman named Mama Ronk. The woman had kind eyes and a pragmatic voice. When Abeni shyly asked if she could rent the sewing machine for an hour, Mama Ronk laughed. My daughter, you want to rent? Sit down and sew. You don't pay me anything. That simple kindness broke something open in Abeni's heart. For the first time in a long while, she felt supported without expectations. Day after day, she visited the shop. She practiced stitching, designed simple outfits, even altered clothes for neighbors at small prices. Her work wasn't perfect, but it was good, honest, growing good. And word spread. Soon, passers-by began asking if she could sew something for them. Aunties brought fabrics. Students asked for alterations. A small customer base formed around her slowly, organically. Not for who she dated. Not for what she posted. But for the quality of her hands. It wasn't glamorous. But it was real. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the buildings and painted the sky orange, she walked past a small kiosk and froze at the sight of a familiar face. Behind. He was laughing with a group of workers, holding a cup of cold water, sweat glistening on his forehead from a long day. But this wasn't the Kahind she left behind. This Kahind looked accomplished, confident, fulfilled. When he spotted her, he waved, friendly and open. She approached nervously. "You're looking well," she said. He nodded. "Thank you. Things have been changing." She smiled awkwardly. "In a good way?" He laughed softly. "Yes, in a good way." A lifestyle magazine posted a video about affordable handcrafted furniture. It went viral on TikTok. Orders have increased. A brand even reached out for a collaboration. Her heart swelled with pride and regret. "That's amazing," she whispered. "You deserve it." He shrugged modestly. "It's hard work, but it's happening." They talked a little longer about work, about life, about nothing too deep. The conversation felt easy, gentle. But beneath every word, she felt the distance. The invisible wall between them. He was polite, kind, but not hers anymore. As they said goodbye, she realized something crucial. Sometimes the people we leave behind become the kind of people we were chasing. But by then, they're too far ahead. Months passed, and life slowly transformed. Abeni's small tailoring work grew. Mama Ronk offered her a permanent corner in the shop. She saved every naira she earned, not to buy luxury items, but to invest in better tools, better scissors, better thread, better fabric. She no longer needed validation from strangers on social media. She was building something meaningful, something grounded. And one day, a young woman walked into the shop wearing a beautifully handcrafted wooden bracelet, the kind she recognized instantly. "Kahind made this," the woman said proudly. "He recommended I come to you for a custom outfit." For a moment, Abeni stood speechless. He still believed in her, even from a distance. She felt warmth flood her chest. Not the longing she once had, not the fantasy of rekindled love, but gratitude. Deep, sincere gratitude. She made the outfit with extra care, delivering it personally. When she handed it to the customer outside the workshop, Kahind stepped out, surprise flickering in his eyes when he saw her. "Hey," he said gently. "Hey," she replied. "You're doing well," he added. She nodded, feeling genuine pride. "So are you." They exchanged smiles, soft, understanding smiles that carried history, healing, and acceptance. And in that moment, she realized something essential. You don't always get to rewrite your mistakes, but life always gives you a chance to write a new chapter. As the months rolled into a year, Abeni blossomed. Her fashion designs spread across Suralere and beyond. Students, working women, even small influencers began wearing her pieces. People appreciated her authenticity, the simplicity, the thoughtfulness, the creativity rooted in real experience. Her journey became a lesson she embodied in every stitch. She was no longer chasing a lifestyle. She was building a legacy. And though she and Kahind never reunited romantically, they became something equally beautiful. Two individuals who grew, healed, and learned to cheer for each other from their separate paths. Because sometimes, love doesn't end with marriage. Sometimes it ends with maturity. In Lagos, stories don't always end with fireworks. They don't always end with two lovers walking into the sunset or a grand wedding filled with aso-ebi and champagne towers. Sometimes they end quietly, softly, like a lesson whispered through the wind that blows across Third Mainland Bridge at dawn. Abeni's life didn't transform overnight. There was no single moment of revelation, no magical scene where everything suddenly made sense. Instead, her transformation came from consistency. Small, steady steps away from her past, away from illusions, away from the loudness of Lagos glamour that once confused her with its glitter. She started attending local fashion meetups again. But this time she wasn't there to impress or chase validation. She went to learn, to grow, to connect. She listened more, spoke less, and practiced even harder. Her designs became sharper, cleaner, more distinct. She infused her identity into every piece. The colors of Surreal, the textures of the market, the strength of her mother, the resilience she earned the hard way. And slowly, opportunity noticed. A small fashion blog posted about her work. Then a Lagos lifestyle page reposted her outfits. Not viral, not explosive, but enough to bring real customers. Enough to make her feel her work mattered. She didn't need a penthouse anymore. She didn't need flashy dates or expensive gifts. She needed purpose. She needed progress. One afternoon, as she was sewing a dress for a client, Mama Ronk approached her, leaning on her wooden walking stick. "Abeni," the elderly woman said with a knowing smile. "Your hands have changed." Abeni looked up, confused. "How do you mean?" Mama Ronk chuckled softly. "They used to tremble. Now they create." That simple statement brought tears to her eyes. Not the painful kind, but the grateful kind. Because it meant that even others could see the new woman she had become. Not the girl searching for shortcuts to success. Not the girl blinded by luxury. But a woman who had walked through fire and come out reshaped. A woman who no longer feared humble beginnings. One evening, after closing the shop, she walked home through the familiar streets of Surreal. The vendors packing up their stalls, children playing football in narrow spaces, neighbors arguing about Nipa light, and the distant rhythm of Afrobeats thumping from someone's speaker. It all felt like a heartbeat she once took for granted. Now it felt like grounding. She passed by a new furniture boutique that had opened recently. To her surprise, a stunning wooden chair sat in the display, crafted with curves that seemed almost artistic. She recognized the craftsmanship instantly. Behind, she stepped inside. The showroom smelled of polished wood and fresh varnish. Several customers browsed the pieces, admiring the uniqueness of the designs. She saw him at the far end, discussing an order with a couple. He looked confident, poised, and deeply in his element. She didn't interrupt. She just watched, proud in a way that wasn't possessive or regretful, but pure. He had grown into the man she always believed he could be, even when she didn't understand his path. When he finally noticed her, his surprise melted into a gentle smile. Sincere, warm, familiar. "Abeni," he said. She greeted him softly, admiring the space. "Your shop is beautiful." He nodded, brushing sawdust from his shirt. "Thank you. It's my first official showroom. It still feels unreal." "It's perfect," she whispered. "You've done well, Kenny." And for a brief moment, they just stood there. Not as lovers, not as exes, but as two people who survived each other's chapter and reached the parts of their stories where they both belonged. He didn't offer to walk her home. She didn't wait for him to. Some connections don't need revisiting to remain meaningful. Instead, they exchanged a peaceful nod. An unspoken blessing that wherever life took them next, it would be forward. As Abeni stepped outside and continued her walk home, she felt lighter. The humid Lagos air wrapped around her like an old friend, and for once, it didn't feel suffocating. It felt like possibility. She returned home, made a simple dinner, and later opened her sketchbook. A fresh page this time. She drew not because she needed to impress anyone, but because she finally understood her own voice, her own rhythm, her own story. And at the bottom of the page, she wrote something she wished she had learned earlier. Not all that glitters is gold, but all that grows is real. In the quiet of her small room in Surreal, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the peace that comes from comfort, but the peace that comes from clarity. The kind of peace you earn. This is Lagos, a city that tests, breaks, rebuilds, transforms. A city where the soft life can blind you, where love can humble you, where decisions echo louder than the traffic on Ikorodu Road. But it is also a city where second chances come dressed as new beginnings, where growth comes after loss, and where the most valuable lessons are learned not in penthouses, but in humility. Abeni learned that love is not measured by lifestyle, but by sincerity. She learned that some relationships are meant to shape us, not keep us. She learned that chasing shortcuts only leads to long detours. And above all, she learned that sometimes the best version of your life isn't the one that sparkles. It's the one that grows quietly and steadily, like truth. Her story didn't end with a prince or a proposal. It ended with something far more lasting: self-worth, direction, and strength. And in a city like Lagos, that is the greatest victory of all.